directly on that.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Let's stand for the pledge and a moment of silence. Gwen, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Kramer is absent with prior notice. Commissioner O'Rourke.
Present.
Commissioner Rexroth.
Present.
Chairman Wessel.
Here.
Commissioner Ross will be late. Commissioner Elgire.
Here.
Commissioner Lautner. Present.
Thank you. We have an agenda prepared for us there. Are there any late additions?
I would move to approve the agenda as presented. Support.
Would you be opposed to starting with C so that Kama can be here for the presentation from on Leelanau County Family Coordinating Council?
Not at all. Support.
All those in support of that motion say aye.
1 second. This is still on the agenda?
Yes.
We talked a little bit this morning about finance, finance and even buildings and grounds about the basement. And I would like to, there's Kama now. I would like some more discussion on the basement, considering something we did learn this morning. So could that be a C and then,
Put that as item C.
okay.
Everybody okay with that?
I'm just wondering why
I wasn't aware this morning, though, so the meeting, so we're gonna get briefed on it then, or what? Or
Yeah, let's,
Where we going?
if it's on the agenda, we can talk about it.
Not an action thing, just.
No.
Just discussion?
My motion is amended to include that change.
My support goes along with that.
All set, everybody? Everybody in support of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have an agenda. We now have public comment. If there's anybody that would like to make public comment, John, please say something to us. We have commissioner comment. We'll turn right to our action item, and the first item on the agenda is budget review. Sean, Kathy, and Deb, and whoever's a part of it.
Nobody wants any part of this but me. So I did these in reverse order with the materials that I handed out. Did I give you one, Kim?
I think so.
I think it's the second item that I handed. I thought I was being clever and going in order, the one that looks like this. So, we did not get to this in the finance committee earlier, but one of my desires or intentions was to hit kind of the roadmap forward. And as far as I know, we kind of juggled the schedule last week to add a Wednesday morning meeting to accommodate or to focus on the discussion on broadband collectively. The judge has also agreed to join, so we have one more agenda beyond today. I guess my thought is it would be a good time following that, maybe it's at the back part of that meeting, if it's to your approval, to kind of hit the current status. What's in front of you right now is as of this morning, can't promise it's complete, but I promise before Wednesday I'll make sure it's absolutely complete. Of all the items that have been discussed, things that we have not, maybe the way to say it is, we haven't pulled off of the list. So hopefully it's a comprehensive list. And what I was hoping to do is kind of start to get to an indication of interest in going forward with the overriding intent of kind of wrapping this up still to try to get to our desired November board meeting for consideration of to move towards an adopted budget, I guess. And so this is like I said, my current list. I've shuffled this a couple of times based on feedback from various meetings in terms of what's grouped with what. But following today, I hope that other than the items I talked about Wednesday, I don't have any additional items in my mind. If you do, I'm more than happy to continue to work through a process, set up additional meetings if needed to talk about them, but I guess I need a little bit of guidance if there are things that you feel are uncovered past broadband. When I'm saying broadband, I think it's collectively completion of what's been what's in process, the additional portions of uncovered part of the county. So I forget how I worded it in here, but complete. When I say complete county broadband, it's all of county broadband, and as well as the ARPA funds that are related to that. So those are the items on my agenda. I guess I would. I'm not sure how to close the loop on that, but that would be my intention or desire to try to get through. What's on here, hopefully this is very familiar. All that's out there at first group as departments came through and presented things that were not in the initial proposed budget. I captured those in that first section. I grouped basically everything else and called it county infrastructure in the middle of that first page. And beyond that, the pending staffing level discussions, I've captured what I've heard to date and what the judge would talk about. Hopefully, there's one more position related to that. So there are a couple of other items I can choose to bring them in. They're kind of at the very, very bottom of the list that deal with requests for others that we've talked about, but were related to other funds other than the general fund. And so just not confuse things. I know sometimes it's a little bit confusing. They're on the list, they're not presented in here. So that's what's in front of you and kind of what I would ask to consider. And I don't know if there's an immediate response, but if that feels right, that's kind of the course I feel like we're on.
The HVAC, and I think you talked about it a little bit this morning, but that's a big ticket item on our list, and we won't have that by Wednesday, right? And so, yeah, I'd like to finish, and I know Gwen would because she's leaving, but
Yes.
I don't know how we finish until we get a stab anyway at and maybe we decide it's just to replace the heat pumps, and we estimate it's going to cost this much to do that, and plug that number in.
With an opportunity to come back from a budget amendment standpoint if it was different than that. Is that what you're thinking?
I would say that that's what it's appropriate to do, because we could be putting this off for a very long time otherwise.
We may have a number before we get to that final budget, something to plug in there.
That's Wednesday. We're talking Wednesday,
Estimate?
as in day after tomorrow.
You'd have a budget estimate possibly from DNW, correct? But it wouldn't, it'd give you an idea of the scope. Wouldn't be an exact number, but it's probably better than nothing.
On which side, Commissioner Rhodes, is that
The heat pump, I mean, the original project we asked for a updated budgeting, but real dollars and cents would be 90 days out from bids if they go out again. So that will never be here
Right.
in this.
That wasn't, no.
Yeah.
And I have a question about the heat pump issue. If we decide that what we're going to be doing is just replacing the heat pumps,
Do it.
why are we making the assumption they all have to be replaced this year? I mean, it could be, there's part of it this year and part of it next year.
As
and
needed.
Part of it the year after that. It's not like, we're not going to replace functioning heat pumps. So it seems, I don't know why it's different than what we've been doing, if that's what we decide to stay with.
There is economies of scale. I mean, right now, we actually are not bidding them out. We're giving them to a subcontractor one at a time.
So you think we should just order them and store them?
But there might be a half this year, half next year option. It doesn't have to be, but I just think there's economies of scale and looking at it as if we decide to go that way instead of just every time they break, okay, how much is this one? And
Right.
I don't think that we're getting as much bang for the buck as if we did something more formal. And that doesn't have to be all in 1 year. I don't know that they could do that anyway.
I'm going to be speaking way out of school here. This is one of those through water cooler talks, because Gary sometimes comes in really early in the morning and waxes.
Yeah.
So,
He starts early in the morning. It's not early in the morning when he finishes.
but when he starts and he's full of energy, he's explained it to me that there still may be some grouping, to Commissioner Rexroth's point, as well as the need to think sequencing-wise, because it does cause an office disruption.
Right.
And I think he was explaining to me maybe you break this building into quadrants or something and you address pieces at a time, but that was, again, a cup of coffee kind of a thing. But I think it goes back to what I did hear or observe in not to try to paraphrase the whole discussion in the buildings and grounds, but I think that the ask was, can we have a meeting where we talk pros and cons of maybe each and having somebody like a Gary explain how that would actually feel might be helpful. That would feel more reasonable timeline-wise than to think you're going to get through an RFP process on a full HVAC.
Right. I think that sums up where we left our building and site committee.
Could we do that Wednesday too?
Getting people here is the issue because
I thought we were talking about just to get a start with Gary.
I have no time limit Wednesday. I delayed my departure till Thursday morning.
I believe the
could
fiber
be here till
things are going to be
midnight.
very short. I mean, they've got some prices for us and they've talked to Charter and Point about those 4 counties. We'll hear that, but I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of discussion from them. So our agenda Wednesday isn't very full.
we can, I'm not opposed to bringing Gary in and having that discussion. I mean, we're not committing anything, we're just getting some idea of scopes of cost, right? And an idea of how to go about the implementation. So I'm okay with that.
I've already reached out to the Apollo engineers too to find out, based on our discussion this morning at Building and Grounds, into those cost projections that were done 2 years ago, how realistic they may be. So, at 2.5.
I just don't think we want to rush this. If we're not ready, then we just need to kick it out a little bit and try to get it as clean as possible.
We can at least maybe get some guidelines.
I mean, to Chairman Wessel's, we know we have a problem, we're all gonna spend some money, no matter what we do, because something else is gonna break, so maybe we can start with it as, put a placeholder for this much and figure it out later, huh?
Would everybody okay with adding that to Wednesday for general discussion if Gary can come and then we'll have everything by the end of our time together Wednesday to try to start doing some finalizing,
Sounds good.
right?
As much as possible. I don't know. I don't know how far we're going to be.
Yep.
I have a question on,
This is a workshop, so feel free to just, I'll be talking just.
okay, Sean, down on our replaced financial software, 265,000. Obviously, you guys talked this morning to the finance on that, or?
So
Okay.
never have gotten to talk about that one fully, so what that represents was the number from the CIP plan,
Okay,
and it reflects, to be honest here, John, but it reflects I don't even know if it's a formal proposal as it's the right word, or whether it's more of an indication of interest from one software provider before I arrived, that we talked to subsequently, but it was a placeholder in the CIP.
okay, yeah, no, first of all, I love your guide here, this is fantastic, okay? Talking to our treasurer, who used to work for John down at Elmwood, Chris, she mentioned another company besides the one that Raymond did, and I don't know if, you know, you and John get on the same page. She said it was much better than the other, but I know nothing about it, I just want to see it coming, and I want to see it in place. Okay, so, thank you.
I think it's reasonable from our schedule this morning and discussions that actual capital outlay might be not likely to even happen next year. I mean, you have a lot of work to do before you get to that. You'd be authorized to look for things, go to the due diligence, present things, but is it reasonable to expect we probably aren't actually spending?
So in that one instance, to your question, that the way I believe their initial schedule worked was X amount up front, Y amount on completion, Z held out, but, you know, after. So I would say it seems unlikely in a multi-year kind of a project that all of those costs would be in 2024.
Right.
Now that's one vendor's summary, but it's tough other than having a placeholder in our mind was all that was kind of.
Yeah.
Just further reiterate that you looking at software implementation to be transpire over, 24 months probably by the time you get the software uploaded.
Yep.
Data implemented. So it would take a long period of time to get in the chute to even have them come on site. So
Right.
it's a conversation we do need to have sooner than later with who's better, but it's the fact that it's 24 months out just to get it in.
I guess that's my point. We're a ways away from spending all this money. There's a difference between making a commitment to move forward and actually dollars out of the pocket.
I think that's a good way to say it.
Yeah.
What John's referring to is we're not even on anybody's clock yet. We're not in their queue.
Right.
And so
Okay, thank you.
any other questions with that? The other item, and maybe this is just my way to tee up and then get out of the way. After I believe the last full budget committee meeting we had, I had a takeaway to kind of summarize those line items that I called roughly, and I'll be corrected on this, substance abuse related. Because of just to make sure we're all on the same page. And that's the one that's got some little yellow squares in it. Where it sits today is in a number of different places in our chart accounts, departments, line items. And so there has been a component, that very first line, I refer to as Board of Commissioners, a discretionary line. There's $30,000 in the Board of Commissioners department that's in this calendar year in 2023 was primarily covering some lift costs. In addition to that, we have, as I think in Sharon's letter, she notes, with the standard amount that has been operating costs, which is in the second line in Department 325153 for $15,000. In addition to that, there are tax revenue items, some of which are in the plan. So the marijuana tax and the excise tax are identified there. Those are components of the proposed budget. The final component is the opioid settlement, and that reflects an annual amount. If you actually look, and I think this has been a question as well, So we've set up a separate fund, which is at 284. There was an amount collected to date, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of 94,000, I know that 94,000, that's good, Sean. So that's out there as well, in addition to the incremental piece.
Do you mean out there still to be spent?
That is,
Awaiting,
there are no commitments that I'm aware of
Okay.
related to that at
Okay.
this point in time.
thank you.
The items that you have, the 30,000 and the 15,000, those are general fund appropriations that the board approved for 2023.
But there's 94 sitting there that we have to
In the
allocate.
fund, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other items below the dotted line, so to speak, are, I think I separated it because, as we've talked about in the past, not all, the grants in general are not shown as revenues until the point where we propose a budget. So there is a substance abuse grant in there, 57,000 in prior years. Right now, nothing's shown in the budget relative to that, but there is a revenue and an expense component of that traditionally or historically. There's a liquor license that we show, as well as a commitment related to convention and tourism tax that's alcohol related. So part of that we commit to Northern Michigan Regional Entity. So those are the components that I'm aware of that are, kind of spread through our items. And it's not intended to do anything other than, hopefully, if it's helpful, it can be a little bit of a roadmap to some of the discussion that we can have now, so.
And I have one more question about the opioid settlement money. My understanding was that's not going to be predictable, that the amounts and the years that it comes might vary depending on who's paying it.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, each entity can pay either upfront or pay over a period of time. So it's to be determined.
Every year.
Yeah.
There's different settlement class action suits. There's a group called distributors, which is 3 pharmaceuticals. There's the J&J settlement, Walgreens settlement, CVS settlement, Teva, Allergen, McKinsey, it goes on. So those have yet to be settled.
Right.
Those will. So the auditors have done a projection, which they think we may receive in 24. Does that recall, Jen? Yes. So,
So we can't count on that money.
it's just.
If it comes, we have it.
Is,
I think on the journal entry, they do have it as deferred revenue, do they not?
about 360.
Yeah, no, they have it showing that you are getting that revenue.
But when?
It doesn't matter. But
365?
they're saying that you have to show it as revenue on your books.
365?
And that's
Did you
just
say?
from the,
Oh, yeah, the amount that Kathy has there from the audit firm.
And I think that was just from the distributors, called the 3 big farmers and J&J. I think it was just those 2 settlements that they projected out the 365 deferred revenue. And they put it on our books.
But that doesn't mean we have it in our hand to spend, does it?
And they're saying that's what you're gonna be allotted.
At some point. I'm just trying
So
to,
how do we budget around that? Do we make these budgets less and then amend them as the money comes in if it does?
So for the placeholder, I believe that $10,897 represents kind of an annualization of what Kathy was describing. I have to go back right now that you said that and make sure. But, to me, when you think about committing funds from it, the question will come back this way will be, what funds do we have in there? And the answer today is 94,000, and in the future, in 2024, we would expect another 11,000, I believe, is how I would say. So that has been put, that is a line item as what's in the proposed budget since right now.
So, Todd, Ty, I think you were on the board when we set up the substance abuse prevention idea. Was that originally just like the startup funds, get going type of thing, or do we intend to pay that every year? Because then we had opioid money coming in, and we said, well, this is perfect, let's do that.
We started that when we were going to have an internal group, and Deb chaired that, and we hired a consultant from Monroe.
Right.
And it was our intention at that time to have it internal and an ongoing expense until we decide what we want to do with it.
Okay.
And then our consultant left and we put Greg on board to write the grant. And he came back to us and said, we probably don't want to do it as a county alone. We want to do it more on a regional basis. And so Greg began meeting with a group that Sharon and Rebecca met with. And then I'm not sure.
And then we joined the lawsuit that came after.
Then we joined the lawsuit, right?
So for this budget then, what is your recommendation for going forward, especially if we don't know where those dollars are coming from? You know, if our intention was to cut an apron string at some point, and we've got the opioid dollars coming in, at least on our books, then we probably wouldn't need to take $30,000 out of our budget.
We came up with that money because we didn't have access to any
Right.
other source.
Right.
So are we intending, okay, so our intention is that they get 30,000.
Yeah, that's what we've done in the past.
How about if we committed there would be 30,000 going to them, but if it could be offset with these other funds, that would decrease the amount, because they need stable funding. And I think that they should be getting any money. Between Sharon and them, I don't know how you guys want to do that. But the money needs to stay in Leelanau County for substance abuse work. Again, how to decide who it goes to is a deeper discussion. But I would be comfortable guaranteeing they get that much, and if it gets offset by this other funding, then we would just do less.
That would be my assumption, that because we have a fair amount of money coming in, that we do not need to commit that whole 30,000. But we just need to have something in there to fill the gap.
But to make sure that they will get that somehow. That will fill the gap if that much doesn't come in. How's that?
I think this discussion is really great, and I think it leads right into probably their presentation. So if you see at the bottom of your page, you'll see the LCFCC request. So what you have there is what the request is, and then you see across what the dollar amount is. So we may be getting a little bit ahead until we have an opportunity to talk about their proposal.
Right.
Well, if I may then, are we going to today look at these one at a time and yay or nay and knock them out?
I thought we were going to do that Wednesday.
We're going to do that Wednesday.
After we hear from HVAC and.
Oh, okay. We don't want to look at any of the others today. We're just going to, okay, that's fine then.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say we're in two different conversations now, and that is funding is one, but the mix and how these dollars are administrated is another. And I think that to Sean's point and Deb's point, now might be the time to bring forward
Yeah.
presenters.
I think so. Yeah, we can always come back to one.
Makes sense. So to Deb's point, and I hope Sharon is always consistent, on July 5th, when we went out with all of our, before July 5th, on July 5th, LCFCC responded with a letter that delineated those 4 items. I believe that's still what we're talking to. So I was just trying to tee up kind of the ask that we received, the reason we're here, and where some of those funding sources are. But if that all makes sense, I'll get out of the way. Let's go.
Well, Sharon's coming up. I want to introduce her as somebody that I've gone to several times, most recently about a month ago when we had somebody living in a tent and couldn't find a place and had substance abuse problems, and called Sharon, and Sharon got together a bunch of support from the region, and very valuable service that Sharon and her group provide. Thank you, Sharon.
Good morning, everybody. Sharon Breland. I wear quite a few hats, and they are enmeshed and synergistic. So I am the coordinator of the Leelanau County Family Coordinating Council, which is your human services coordinating body, your state designated for Michigan. I also am a prevention specialist working towards becoming a certified prevention specialist for Catholic Human Services of North Prevention. So, that's a separate contract where I get paid to put in 45 hours a month here in Leelanau County, whether it's coming to meetings like this or working directly with youth or anybody else in the community on anything related. And I am also the coordinator of the Substance Free Coalition of Northwest Michigan, which brings together the leaders from the county-based substance misuse coalitions for Grand Traverse, Leelanau, Kalkaska, Benzie, and Manistee, because these things don't stop at the dotted lines, right? And we can learn from each other, and we can build on each other's efforts. And, the Fortified Parallel Resilience Network. You'll be hearing lots more about that in the future. It's been a little dormant since COVID, but that is all about educating and combating adverse childhood experiences, childhood trauma, building resilience, changing the way we work together in the community. And ACEs is a very fundamental, it's one of those things, it's one of those one stones that you throw at a whole castle of birds, and you can really help, and substance abuse is just one of them. So that's me.
I feel like I shouldn't have gone after that. I'm Rebecca Tedbrig, Executive Director of LIFT Teen Center and Chair of the Leelanau County Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition here.
And I'm Audrey Sharp. I'm the Associate Director at the Friendship Community Center in LIFT, and I support the coalition as well.
So I'm gonna walk you through, I'm gonna sort of ignore the basic LCFCC stuff since I'm seeing you tomorrow night again about that. But I'm gonna skip to parts 2, 3, and 4 of the request that I sent you earlier this year. And I did provide some supplemental materials today for you to look at your leisure. I have sent some electronic copies to Deb and Laurel as well. And then I sent Deb some even more detailed information about the opioid.
And that was this morning, correct?
Yeah, I sent
And I've been
that
in meetings all day, so I have not.
So I don't expect you to have, yeah.
Do you want me to distribute that information?
The detailed information, I leave that up to you. Some of it is excerpted in what I passed out this morning, so I'll touch on that quickly. But to sort of also set the scene, there was a meeting earlier this year between Deb and Kathy and Becca and Audrey and myself. And that was basically a functional meeting. So how is this all working? And it really started specifically with how is the relationship between the county and the County Substance Misuse Coalition working. And there was a general feeling that it's a little clunky right now for both the county and for your coordinators. And I saw an opportunity to kind of help be a middleman and kind of smooth that out so that it would work better for everybody. So that's when we look at the first proposal, that you take that $30,000 that you're already allocating to the coalition and move it under my cost center somehow, that's where that comes from. And kind of what we heard from Deb was that administration isn't really sure that the county ought to be running that group. and that there are some liabilities associated with it that maybe the county really doesn't want to handle. And then from Lyft's side, as the coordinators, it's a little cumbersome that every time we would like to undertake a project, we need to come back for individual approval of every expense to the board of commissioners. Not that we don't love you, but it slows things down a little bit. So where that comes in, I said that is either LCFCC or Catholic Human Services, we could come in and just the way that you have been allocating money to LCFCC, and I report to you annually, and you disperse that when I request it throughout the year. And then we're able to spend it as we need to throughout the year. If it would make things simpler for everybody, maybe I can take on that role in this situation. I propose doing it as the LCFCC because right now, that money is held by United Way of Northwest Michigan as our fiduciary. They charge us 1% of receipts to do that. Catholic Human Services could also do it, but they charge 10%. So, which is actually pretty standard, right? That's not actually a scary amount because most people don't want to be a fiduciary at all. And I should specify here that out of all those organizations I'm contracting with, only Catholic Human Services exists as a corporation on paper. Everything else is an informal coalition that needs a fiduciary. So that's why we're proposing that let me request those funds, let me handle dispersing them to the coalition as needed, and we will make reports when and as often as you would like, basically.
Reports being obviously targets being hit, milestones, success stories, those sort of things.
Yeah, a plan, maybe at the beginning of the year, the general plan, and what the basic spending plan was also in the packet for this year. And as we're referring to, 12,000 of that 30,000 is currently going for the coordination contract with Lyft. And then we had event costs for the senior expo, sponsoring the Leelanau County prom and all-night parties, and then also getting in, speakers or other people for significant events. Our goal is to have one major event per quarter, ultimately, of some sort. And then also there's, is there anything that we can give as a handout? Is there anything, maybe there might be advertising, which we're talking about another grant, or community awareness building. So.
How measurable are those things? Because that was one of the complaints I'd heard a while back is that, boy, these things are nice, the prom party, that's nice, but how can we measure those things? How do we know we're being successful? How do we know we're directing it all, the right way? Is handing out stickers really effective?
Data points, yeah. So, yes, it's difficult data to gather, and sometimes, especially with prevention, it's kind of like trying to prove the negative, right? You're trying to stop something before it ever even starts. So over time, if we can see a reduction in the number of users we report, overdoses we report, if we can find evidence that reports a change in attitude. One of the key tools that we have in our arsenal is something called My5, and I'm not going to be able to remember what that whole acronym stands for. I'm sorry right now. I think it's Michigan Physical Health of Users, something like that. But it's a survey that can be administered in the schools to 7th, 9th, and 11th graders. And it's administered every other year. So the idea is that you get the same cohort of kids and you see what's staying the same or what's changing with that same cohort of kids as they move through school. There was a break in gathering the data due to COVID and not being in school. It's administered, it takes one class period, it's administered in school, and they ask about everything. And one of the things I love about it is they don't just ask, what are you using? By several different categories, but they ask what their perception is of what their peers are doing. And peer pressure, right, is one of those big things that can can lead to use. It talks about whether, whether and to what extent they feel supported by their school and by their parents and by their community. There's a short version and a long version. The long version actually also gets into depression and suicidal behavior. But that would be one of the key sources when we ask about, how does it help to support the prom, right? Well, number one, every group party that we throw under controlled circumstances and the number of kids we get to that party, those are kids that are not having a party at their grandparents' house on the lake shore. So just attendance numbers is a key factor, but we can also, over time, use that student survey to figure out if we are affecting attitudes. So that's one example.
Sharon, I got a question on that. I mean, John was working on contacting the other schools in the area. I think we have 4 out of 7. Is that right? Or 3 out of 7?
So we have 4 public school districts. There's also TCAPs, but they're handled through Grand Traverse County. We met with all of the school superintendents 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Because yes, we did not have good participation. And the way it's done, the schools own the data. They can get their own individual data. But unless more than one school does the survey, the information does not get released publicly because we're not into school sharing. We're not trying to say, oh, Glen Lake's got a drug problem or, Sutton's Bay is vaping. We already have a commitment, a firm commitment from Leelanau School to run the survey, and I'm working with them on a date in November. We're going to circle back with the other superintendents soon. We've had some initially favorable responses.
Well, good, because, when we talked to John and the others, we were like, it's like Melinda said, how can we say that this is working or to get the right information in? And that just, information to support the program. I mean, I've been to your meetings and stuff. I think everybody is really concerned. They're really on the right track. This looked like a major roadblock when I was there.
Certainly the prevention efforts go hand in hand with being able to measure them. If you don't have prevention efforts, you can't measure them, right? So we're finding that year after year, we also have to adjust our sales sometimes. And MyPie is a great way to identify that. Sometimes it's anecdotal.
It's hard, yeah.
Yeah. We'll work with people, so.
I mean, if you save one or 2 kids, it's probably worth the money. Okay, just 1 or 2, but we'd just like to see any kind of results that you guys can get to us. Okay.
Catholic Human Services is about to launch a young adult survey as well. I've actually got the things at home, the flyers to distribute. That's going to be for basically, I think, up to age 26, like post-high school up to age 26. Any data that I get from any source, including that one, I'm going to bring that to you guys too, and to the group to inform our choices.
Do you think that just because it's Catholic Human Services, I mean, attached to them, that some people stay away from that? That's a fair question. I mean,
No, it's absolutely a fair question. The reason I laugh is some of you know that I'm Jewish. Now you all know that I'm Jewish. And when Lisa Anderson, for those of you who knew her, when she left Catholic Human Services to work for the Commission on Aging in El Paso County, they said, who should we try to get for this role in Leelanau County? And she said me, and they like the idea partially because I'm already connected in your community, right? Because it's all about connections that you have. And the very first thing I said to my supervisor was, I'm Jewish, is this gonna be an issue? Am I gonna be a good fit? And honestly, so far they've been one of the best employers I've ever had, and I was pretty skeptical. None of the work that we're doing in up north prevention, which is kind of what we lead with, like up north prevention together. Could it be a barrier? But nothing that we're doing is coming with any religious bent or any religious strings attached.
Okay.
And so the more we get that out in the community, and build that awareness, could it be a barrier? Yes, but we work to make sure that that's a non-issue.
I mean, my understanding, Catholic Human Services issues personal protection orders.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I had a referral last week and went to the prosecutor and I said, I have a person that needs to interview for PPO because she said death threats and stuff, and spoke, call it Catholic Human Services. So,
I did alcohol evaluations for them for about 3 months.
Yeah.
There's nothing Catholic about it. It's just a social service agency.
yeah, that's.
And they're very professional.
So,
They didn't pay well.
well,
Like
anyway,
I said, for 2 or 3 months.
as long as we got the PPO in, taken care of, so, okay. I think you do a great job. Thank you. You got a lot of hats on, like you said.
Do you ever peruse the school libraries to make sure that there isn't books encouraging that kind of, behavior or grooming kids to begin to use substances or anything along that line?
I will say that I've been in a few of the school libraries, and there's one that doesn't have very many books in it. It's true, unfortunately. But, so I think more of that would be like the actual libraries, which we can't necessarily affect change unless we advocate for that.
That's a great question. There are lots of influences on these young people's lives. You don't know what they're internalizing,
You don't.
especially on their phones, right? You're not sure all that. But I think conversation is the biggest thing, is even if they aren't exposed to that information, maybe hearing a different perspective, and definitely relationships with community members that are not teachers or parents, I do think allows greater entry points into those conversations. But it's a great question. I've never even considered that.
Yeah. Well, and anecdotally, right, it's, it's not just about what information is already in there, but what information could we bring in as a resource. One of the things that's happened over the past year is that Becca and Audrey spearheaded bringing them and me and John Boonsberg from the court and a few other people into the schools to discuss fentanyl. And so just anecdotally, the first one we did was at Leelanau, right? Yeah. And the kids were absolutely surprised that that was in this community. 100% they had no idea.
And it was shortly after there was a large amount of seeds already.
Yep.
Sharon,
So, yeah.
excuse me. If the figure that's 104,600, picking up on what Gwen and Melinda were talking about, was now 74,600, what would it do to your program?
Well, so as I mentioned in my really long report, I'm hoping that you'll look at all 4 components completely separately, right? So you've got the ongoing 15,000 support for LCSC. You've got the 30,000, which is already in the budget, right? That's revenue neutral. That we're just hoping that you'll move or handle in a different way in the budget, whether it comes from the general fund or the opioid money, which honestly is kind of a good idea if you can take it from there, take some pressure off the general fund. The other 2, anything we could get to help those would be great. The 2 that we haven't gotten to yet. If there will be a reduction in services of some sort if we don't find additional funding.
Maybe I asked the question wrong, because I think.
Yeah, where does the
Well,
30,000 deduction?
we didn't have opioid money last year, but now we do, so that's in here, and with that in here, we have 104.
Right, I'm proposing everything over the 45,000, right? The 15,000 for LCFCC and the 30,000 for the coalition. So the other $60,000, that's a completely new ask.
So that was what, so
Yeah.
instead of increasing your budget by
Yeah,
60,000, we increase it by 30,000.
right.
And it still saves 30 from our general fund.
Well, just a
So-
clarification there, if I haven't looked at these numbers correctly, you had mentioned that the idea of guaranteeing the 30 offset by the opioid money. But if you look through all 4 budget requests 3 and 4 anticipate using the opioid money as well. So if you approve 3 and 4, there is no offsetting opioid money Because 3 and 4, rough numbers off by a few bucks, but basically 3 and 4 anticipate using all of the marijuana tax and all the opioid settlement to fund those 2 items. So I'm not saying a yea or nay, I'm just trying to make sure we all understand the numbers. So you couldn't say yes to all 4 and then also say we'll use the opioid to offset the 30 because the opioid has
Yeah.
already spent that.
Right.
So just
Except-
making that clear, so, yeah.
And I did say up to. I mean, this
Yep.
is a case of
Yep.
anything you could give us would be a blessing, kind of a thing.
So I'm fine with having her administer the 30,000 wherever it comes from, or the LFCCC, because I don't particularly need to see that you're going to spend $1,000 on, like, whatever. As long as we get a report every year on the program and what's going on. I want to make sure I understand. So what I was saying is if we don't give you 30,000, we know that it comes from another source. But that if it doesn't come, we still give 30, right? If next year, in 2025, no particular settlements are coming, then we would have to give 30. But this year, we put 30,000 there, and as money comes in, it can be offset. Actually, it's already there, so it could be offset. Is that what you guys are saying?
It's still, if you approve 3 and 4, you've already spent the opioid offsetting money you're talking about coming in.
That's correct.
Yep, and leave the residue, yeah.
Or
So-
you would spend, you've got 94 in the bank right now?
Yeah,
And
there's-
basically this, if you funded it all 100%, you would eat 100% of that.
Right.
So you can do the.
So if you read 3 and 4,
So do-
Gwen, it anticipates the use of the marijuana tax and the opioid settlement as revenue for items 3 and 4.
So does that mean we would not give them 30 this year?
So do-
Well, no,
do
it just
1,
means
3,
there's
and
no-
4.
There's no like other money gonna come in to offset that 30 is what it means. It means you're just giving them 30.
Right.
Up here, but down here, they're getting money
Do we
that's
want,
coming in.
do you want to use all the fund balance up too? Because like you said, what if in 2025 there was no, what if it
We need
didn't
a
come in 2025?
Chalkboard.
So approve 1, 3, and 4, is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I want to go back to what I was, because maybe my number was wrong.
Kathy's got something?
Yeah.
I'm just picking up.
Yeah.
Having looked at the Attorney General's exhibit on the opioid settlement money,
Mhm.
you're very restricted as to what you can use opioid settlement money for.
Mhm.
So if we have $94,000 real, now, we do.
I love this.
Yeah.
I like that.
In 2024.
Mhm.
We've already allocated 30,000 in the substance abuse prevention coalition line item. Lyft has utilized some of that. That was at your discretion, you contracted. The marijuana excise tax and marijuana tax money, that's general fund revenue. You have not decided what you're doing with that because it's relatively new. Am I correct?
That's
Okay.
Yep.
So.
And that's not restricted either, to my understanding, right?
You know, now that I am understanding.
Yep.
So that's general fund revenue that's coming in that you all haven't realized is revenue yet and done anything with other than reduce general fund expenditures
Okay.
with that revenue. But the opioid settlement money, if 94 is in the bank,
That's restricted.
we've got a deferred revenue line item that the auditors say we can expect $365,000 somewhere down the road. It's a cash flow issue. We don't know when it's coming. But the things that these individuals have outlined fall under address the needs of pregnant and postpartum women, expanding treatment of neonatal abstinence syndrome, expansion of warm hand-up programs and recovery services, treatment for incarcerated population, prevention programs, expanding syringe services programs, evidence database collection and research analysis, analyzing the effectiveness of the abatement strategies within the state. And the thing that I think Sharon brought to the table when we had our meeting with Deb months ago was that, yes, these individuals do target a specific age demographic in the county. This program is cradle to grave.
am I correct?
In your prevention.
We're actually all cradle to grave.
Yeah, okay. So.
With an emphasis on you.
Your opioid money, I think we also heard the undersheriff talk about the fact that we can't use our opioid settlement money to offset our TNT officers, which we thought maybe
Right.
would be a cool thing to do. But it doesn't fall within the Attorney General's guidelines. This was an attachment that I got months ago, but I got it again today. So, this is something that I think it helps you. Really not much else you can do with your opioid money.
Oh,
And that's part of what I
yeah.
ended up
Restricted
doing.
funds,
I'd
yep.
also like to show that when you look at this page, they did a survey, MPHHS did a survey of what is most needed to do with this money. And the second highest, with 19%, was prevention programming.
Yeah, I was not
Last year,
proposing.
we gave you 45,000. The 30,000 of our substance abuse and the 15 for
Just general.
the
LCSC,
general,
Yeah.
so 45.
Yeah.
Right.
I would like to propose, just to get started, that we continue with the 15. We've always done that. That's a Leelanau County Family Coordinating Council. And then we commit all of the marijuana and the substance abuse, the opioid money. But we take the general fund money that we've been putting in. We don't need that now. And we've got several positions that we're trying to find out how to pay for. So we get some of that 30,000 back into our general fund. Because last year, we didn't have marijuana money.
Yep.
We didn't have substance
You
abuse money.
you did have marijuana.
We didn't
money
have
last year.
opioid settlement.
You did not have the opioid settlement, that's correct. So you're looking to give them 52,000 along with the 94? That's what you just stated to me.
That's what I heard.
That is what you
yeah.
said. The
Right,
marijuana
'cause-
is 52.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm thinking,
What I'm
Oh, no.
speaking to is, I don't think we need to do our general fund contribution, and we can still support the program by making sure they get the substance abuse money and the marijuana money.
so you would
Right.
move that allocation then to the LCFCC allocation, is what I'm
I
saying.
think he's,
You have to, your 30 is under the Board of Commissioners under substance abuse, and you're saying you want to make that, and that make that 0, right?
yes.
But you're
Just-
taking in 52 from the marijuana, so
Where are you getting 52 though? I think that's where you're losing us because.
No, marijuana tax is 52 on
It's
it.
51,8.
Close enough. We're
42.
not, we're rounding
All right,
numbers.
all
I'm
right.
rounding up.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see what you're doing.
52K.
Okay. Yep.
So for my notes, I'm just want to making sure, you're gonna make your 101, 100, allocation to lift, substance abuse, 0.
This year.
I'm saying that's what I proposed for
Okay,
discussion,
right.
because we put that forward in here when we didn't have any other funds to
I just want to make sure I'm getting the notes
support.
right.
So
And,
the only question I have on that, if I could, is right now as it stands with our budget numbers that we've been given, there's a bottom line expenditures and income. What of these things have been baked into those numbers already? Have we already baked in the marijuana revenue?
So the ones above that, that's what I was trying to
Right.
to identify. So the 51,842 in along with $50.
Okay.
Right.
Other specific ones, the opioid piece of 10,897, both as a revenue and expenditure in Fund 284.
But
So this is to always be careful because that's not general fund.
the opioid is revenue and expenditure, but the marijuana as it stands is revenue only.
Correct.
We treat
So if we decide to allocate that, that leaves a further $52,000 hole in our budget as it stands.
And that, at 22, so if you're gonna take that 30 out of VOC and use all the 52, you're negative 22. See what I'm saying? So you're gonna pull your 30 out of your Board of Commissioners, and you're gonna take the 52 and move
You're
it to
doing-
LCC, along with the 15.
I'm on the same track as you. I
Yes,
mean,
yes.
we have 52,000 of revenue right now we are considering as using for our whole budget. It just sits in our budget document as revenue to be used any way we want. We have a 30,000 in our tentative budget to give like we did before. So if you take out the 30 and you give them the 52, that still reduces general county revenue by $22,000. I'm not saying to do it or not, I just want to make sure we all understand the math, so that's.
So they're getting
Yeah.
an extra 22 though, which I bet you could use,
I guess
right?
my question.
I'm
I
sure.
like the idea
Yeah.
of that kind of money
Yeah.
going for that service.
Yeah.
So,
Just if I could interject that because you have not decided really what you want to do with marijuana tax revenue, and it is not, it doesn't have earmarks or restrictions on
No,
it
it's
by
liquid.
the Attorney
Mhm.
General. Opioid does.
Mhm.
Leave the 51E as general fund revenue
Right.
and just keep it and offset your general fund.
Okay.
And allocate your 94,000 that you have in your opioid settlement right now to this proposal. And I've got no skin in this game. I'm just
Mhm.
saying,
Mhm.
you know you're restricted on the opioid.
Right.
You know you are.
Correct.
And, but you're not on marijuana. And if you need the 51,000 for your general fund, keep it.
You can-
I don't disagree, but that's, I mean, the only thing we have to be aware of is that's not an ongoing thing. That's a bucket of money that runs out after it's gone.
But we're making a decision
But-
for next year, so.
Right, and I'm fine with that. It's just like, this isn't like a multi-year commitment. It's, you're saying, this year, go grab that money, use it for these things. Next year might be a whole different thing.
Come
Because
back to the table.
That's-
in 2 years, the
my-
94 is gone at that pace, and then you're actually spending,
I know, and I'm
Yeah.
just bringing it up because the auditors have done calculation on our population and the potential settlements for opioid, that you've got a deferred revenue on the books of 365.
Hmm.
So I'm just,
so there,
Yeah.
Thank you,
so
Kathy.
I think I'm following your train. I like the idea, I like that idea, except do we want to spend down the entire 94K? Do we set at 84, leave 10 in there, because then next year at least we've got some seed money to
I think that makes sense to me. Where Kathy's coming from, anything that you think about, you want to spend if you make a priority of where you would want to draw from, you want to give yourself as much flexibility. And if this meets a qualification on the magic
Sure.
money, which is opioid,
till it comes in.
I would go
Right.
there first. But
General
I don't
fund,
think
yeah.
the magic is offsetting the marijuana tax because it is a general fund revenue, to your point, Commissioner Renfro. So I think, to me, I would consider what the plan is holistically in your mind for opioid. And I know the administrator has had some discussions, Deb, with others that have developed plans. I don't know what our appetite is for any of that, but to that point, I think I would give some consideration to where you foresee the ability or desire to go with that in the near and long-term future.
so I don't know those things. There's basically, if I'm reading between the lines, there's other people that have ideas of where to spend that opioid money, is what you're telling me. That does meet the criteria.
Well, for example, there are other counties that have said, we have X amount of money, and then they've put these things out to bid, or asked for RFPs, from different entities. I know Ty and I had a conversation, with
Greg.
Greg in terms of, how could dollars be expended, and there were some thoughts about, how is Benzie doing it and everything else. This would pretty much exhaust our ability to kind of put out that RFP, or if this is a direction that the board wants to go, but it certainly also addresses a lot of things in our community. So I don't think that there's any one particular way that it has to be done. If this is the direction that the board wants to go, then we just simply wouldn't.
I like where we're going with this. I think the 15,000 for the Family Coordinating Council is different. It doesn't even seem to me like it could be used by the substance abuse. But since Governor Engler, we've been paying that as a county. And that's just, I think we ought to treat that amount differently. We support the Family Coordinating Council, which supports our families, but all of the other abuse. So I would see us maybe the 84 from substance abuse and the 15 from the regular line item that's in our budget to support the Family Coordinating Council. Throw that out for.
The only question
I
is,
have a paperwork question for Sharon. So if the board decides to do this, does this all go through LCSCC? Or is it a subsidiary in agreement with somebody else?
No, it'd all go through LCSCC.
So your line item for your your LCFCC will be determined by what you decide in this package.
But I don't believe the paying of a coordinator fits the substance abuse settlement, opioid settlement.
You have to do it all as one though, that's what she's saying. It's an agreement with LCFCC so when you look at your budget, it's gonna be 15 plus 90 plus 50, all as one number in that line item of not payment.
We can use different sources of money to pay that amount.
So it'll be,
We can continue to have, tell me if I'm wrong, but we can continue to have our ongoing
Yep.
contract we've always had with Family Coordinating Council. And then we can also contract with them to do the opioid work.
So I'm gonna follow with your suggestion and just save a little more opioid money. I mean, the 11 in revenue is not part of the 94 we have, correct? The 11 is anticipated 2024 opioid settlement money. So if we drew down 64 from the opioid settlement, use the 11 that's gonna be coming in 2024, and do the 15 contribution we normally had, that totals to 90,000. It doesn't get you to 104, but it gets you a long way towards what you asked for, and leaves us with some reserves in opioid. And I mean, it actually, and it increases our amount from the previous year by $55,000. And I think that leaves us with some leeway in the opioid fund, leaves some money in there, and gets you a long ways to what you'd like to have.
I like that.
So you're saying they'll give them this big chunk now instead of maybe dividing it over 2 years?
Well, it would leave,
Because they're
it's still,
getting a big chunk.
yeah, it still would
which is
leave 30,
nice.
yeah.
But should we be, although we have 365 coming, don't we?
Over 30 years, that's amortized over like some time frame that we don't know what that is.
yeah, the original time frame was the original when Kathy and I were working with Chet, before Chet left, it was 18 years or 10 grand, right, John? Something like that for 180,000, and then all of a sudden the treasurer's office got a lump sum of 80,000, and then we just got 10 or 11 here recently. So that's where you get your 94.
And I
Nobody
guess,
knows.
I mean, that's a question I ask you, is would you rather have us shave that down some and make sure we had some for next year, or go like this and hope for a more settlement money coming in this year? I mean, there's two ways to look at that, right?
I would like it to know that it's going for ongoing programs, so that you get an increase, that you can increase programming that will continue, and it can be funded in 3 or 4 years as well as next year,
So this is an interesting question. And can I throw another variable into the discussion?
Please don't. I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
I'd like to know too where the C3 grant stands too.
So I need to get you the paperwork to transfer that over so the C3 grant, the $50,000 extra prevention grant that the county received, I am going to get you some paperwork to transfer the fiduciary for that over to Catholic Human Services. That has to go, they have a prevention license. And even though the fiduciary fee is higher, that's really the best place. They're already managing several other county contracts with that. And there again, that will transfer some pretty hefty reporting responsibility off the county and to us, and it will make it easier for them to use the funds. That expires at the end of February. So yes, I need to get you guys the paperwork for that. So my other variable, my parts 3 and 4 of my request, right, are coming to you because liquor tax, right? So PA2 of some year that I can't remember off the top of my head says that a certain amount of the money generated from alcoholic beverage sales in each county gets returned to that county. And it has to be specifically used for treatment and prevention of STDs. And the money generated in a county can only be spent in that county. Now, for a while, that money was amplified when the convention center was built. There was an agreement that a certain amount of the liquor tax revenue from that facility for a certain number of years would go to all the counties in Michigan. That expired 5-ish years ago, I think. And that is the money that NMRE administers. NMRE gets that money on behalf of all the counties, 21 counties in northern Michigan. And they run a grant program to distribute that money. The revenues, well, two things happened. One was that not for a long time, a lot of that money wasn't actually being requested. So the fund balances were building up. There used to be this additional revenue. A couple of things have happened. A, people are getting better about asking for that money, and Gwen was part of that discussion when she was on the board. You know, why it's not doing anybody any good sitting in the bank, right? They're sitting in the coffers. Part of it is that NMRE is putting some larger holds maybe on that they used to, because if they don't receive enough Medicaid money to help people who need treatment, they take it out of the liquor tax funds. We're doing a better job of spending that money, and revenues are down. So we came to this year when we requested liquor tax money, and we requested it both for use for the coordinated prevention activities in Leelanau County. And in my report, I sent you a copy of one of my quarterly reports that shows you how we use that money in the schools and through the family court to work with kids. And then secondarily, that Substance-Free Coalition of Northwest Michigan that I mentioned to you has also been requesting grants from that money for the past 5 years to run our opioid misuse prevention campaign, and also anti-stigma and a few other things. The materials that I handed out to you today are all relative to how the SFC has been using and plans to use that money in the coming year. And so that grant has been a multi-county grant. We've gotten some from Kalkaska, some from Leelanau, some from Grand Traverse. And again, remember, the money pulled from any one county can only be used in that county. Right. This year, when I submitted my grant requests, I submitted a request for $65,000 or $70,000 just for the coordinated prevention in Leelanau County. And then another $28,000, $29,000 for that shared campaign, which if you've seen the billboards with people made out of pills, or the ones that offer a choice between Tramadol and Tylenol, or the ones most recently that say, you know, about fentanyl, how much fentanyl is deadly. That's us. That's this campaign. We're also on broadcast TV, we're on streaming TV, and we're on digital display ads as well as Facebook and Instagram. So this year I submitted those requests, and I was told there's a maximum of $30,000 available from the
Oh, that's a big cut.
Yes. And the other thing that they've done is they instituted a 1 year, so they looked at how much revenue they're receiving from the county. And again, as you're discussing, right, do we want to spend all of our money right now, or do we want to make sure we've got some money going forward? They've also, the boards at NMRE have instituted a hold of 1 year's worth of revenue. So they're holding some for the future, just to make sure we don't run out. They're holding some for treatment of people. $30,000 is what was left. And there's some actually for grants to reimburse the schools for doing my as a parent.
You know, a couple of years ago, the executive director for MMRE came to us and kind of criticized our county for not spending down the amount of money that was in our account. I think we ought to maybe appeal their decision. If it's our money, I'm not sure how they can say, but you can't get it all.
Well, and I'm going to be looking for your support soon, because, so we've got one other issue, right? So number one, I'm just trying to keep these programs whole. You know, I was getting almost $90,000 a year, now I'm getting 30. So like the SFC ads, well, so the SFC also has $23,000 on deposit with United Way. They're our fiduciary also. Leftovers from a grant we received 7 years ago, plus some ongoing community contributions. We're planning on extending that money this year, right now. to try to maintain some of the campaign in Calcasta and Leelanau counties. However, if Leelanau County could allocate some money, that would really help to keep the program alive here in Leelanau County. The other problem that we have, and it's been muttering for a while, again, this is your money, and NMRE is basically setting some conditions for it that aren't in state law. I get that. The board that recommends approval to the NMRA board, the SUD board, has been saying for a while that they don't think that any one grant should be funded for more than 3 years. You know, cut me pretty strict, right? The local Leelanau County Prevention Grant is being funded for the 15th year, or the longest running grant they've ever made. We think it works. We think it's good work. The SFC grant, this will be year 5. So if they decide to hold really firm to that statement, and when they were approving the grants this year, the chair of the SUD board was again saying, we really got to get these longer term grants off the books. We might get nothing at all next year for these 2 programs.
That tells me they don't understand the program.
I've talked to
Because
Greg.
that's totally
It's
not even relevant.
These things are never going to generate revenues. I realize nobody wants to fund something forever, but you know what? There are some things that are never going to generate revenues that are fundamentally important to the community. You know, that we've got to say, you know, for the health of our community, we want to invest in. I think this is a very short-sighted idea. I've talked to Greg McMorrow and I said, do you think there's scope?
Is he still on the board?
Yeah, he is. And I said, do you think there's scope for a polite but firm pushback on this policy? And he said, yes.
Yeah.
So I would like to make a campaign, and I will be coming to you for support, you know, and it is your money at the end of the day. It is Leelanau County's money. You know, to say, no, if it's working, don't shoot it in the head just because there might be something new and shiny and unproven.
So can I ask how much they're holding in reserve? I used to be on the sub board, so how much are they holding in reserve?
I would have to get the latest numbers from the packets from Greg. This is not information that they make readily available to the public. Yeah, so every now and again I ask Greg to slip me the numbers from the packet, and I would have to get updated numbers.
Because they did warn us the revenue was going to go down.
Yeah.
And we were spending they had like 150,000, 160,000 in
It used
reserve.
to be like, yeah.
And we were like, let's get this money working. But I get that it was going to go down, but 30,000 is nothing.
It is. I mean, compared, we've done a good job of spending it down. So, long story short, but yes, I mean, we're looking at getting to cut back what we're offering. It could get worse in future years. You know, part of me says don't leave the money in the bank if there's, you know, but part of me also says, yes, there are other needs in the community. And yeah, next year, if things go south, we could be really desperate. So I don't know if I clarify.
Well, do we?
But I've demonstrated that this is not an easy situation.
Well, we're not making final decisions today. I think we have enough information to take back to our Wednesday meeting when we start figuring it all out. So any last questions for Sharon or
So,
Rita Lift?
3 and 4,
Yes.
how will you, if we can't fund that completely, what is your plan then? I mean, are there,
I will keep looking for other sources. If you can only fund it partially, I will be grateful because that's more than we have right now. And we will use anything you can give us to just for the ability to provide some ongoing service in Leelanau County. You know, but it's a totally new ask. I ask for a lot, knowing that I might only get some of it or none of it. Anything that you can give will help the community. If you can't give anything,
All right.
we'll do what we can.
Rebecca or Amanda, you have any last words for us? Are we all set for this? Any last ones? We aren't making decisions today.
Right.
Just thanks for what you do. I know from the coordinating council, just listening to the people, they all take ownership and they have their heart in it, and they do it for personal reasons a lot. I mean, they're really good people, so thank you.
And from my years as a substance abuse counselor, if you can get kids in high school to not keep using, that's critical, because once it keeps going, then you're talking long-term treatments. So it's critical work.
I invite you, when you come back tomorrow, to slip any one of us or Deb a note or Sean a note, say, here's what I heard, and here's what we absolutely do need, and here's what we are flexible on. Give us some feedback tomorrow, because we're struggling with balancing the budget.
Basically, anything you feel you could allocate,
We got it.
I will be grateful for. I will do the best I can with whatever you can allocate.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
And I will see you
Thank you.
tomorrow.
Thank you, everybody.
It's been an hour and 25 minutes. Do we want to take a 5-minute break?
Thank you.
I can take your card if you want to remember where it's at.
But I
We're
told
back.
her, that poor woman lives
We're back.
In your district.
yours.
It's all right. You did good.
So
Your district.
I didn't have additional items specifically for today.
Good.
So, two things. One is Deb was just confirming, so let me try to say again what I think Wednesday is. The two firm items are broadband, collectively ARPA. The second item is the judge would like to speak to the one incremental staffing, as well as whatever else she would like to do. She was going to join us. She has a commitment in court until 10:30, but I was going to try to give her a heads up when we're free. And then I think the third item, I would still love to go through an exercise, if for no other reason, again, recognizing this isn't necessarily decisioning, but to help me narrow down the remaining items. And I think the two things that would help is, in my mind, getting to a narrower list. So if there are clear items where there is no consensus or no desire to further explore, we could, through some indication, I know that's a little bit awkward, kind of like I like you, you like me, we can go through that. But that would also help if there are other items on your mind that you don't feel like you've had an opportunity through the scheduled sessions we've had, or kind of where we've wound the road through here. I am more than happy to chase those down. I'm just having direction. So my ask would be, if there is a homework here, I know I'm not in a position to give the homework, but if you can take a look at that remaining list of status items. So I've included columns out to the right, kind of a yes, no, which was
All of these.
it was a thumbs up, kind of thumbs down interest. Thank you. Yeah, that one. If you can think through that, what I would love to do, if we have the time, is to kind of run through a quick indicator there, and whether that's passing me notes, whether it's I don't know what's appropriate, but I would love to catch those and then be able to come out of Wednesday with, clear direction on what's next. Does that?
It does. I'm just trying to suggest something that might expedite things. I mean, if we're doing homework and these things are non-binding, it's just a kind of a look.
Just
Why don't we do them and email them and have them compiled for the next meeting? I mean, if everyone's in agreement, that seems to be the most expeditious to me.
I would be happy to.
Is that-
Email what we,
And I
Yes or no?
don't, email them to Sean, just go through and put your, again, none of
Yes or
those would
no?
be binding, it just gives an idea of
However you
potential
prefer.
support, right? I mean, is that what you're trying to gauge? I
It
don't know.
is. Yes. And I'm happy to do that. I could run over right now, get you a piece of, y'all have paper. I mean, I'll take paper too, whatever would be
scan them and email them, or is it in Excel format, which would be easier for you?
Either way is fine.
And you would,
It's out, but it's in a PDF as well. Yes.
Are you done?
yeah, you would need them back by like Wednesday morning to,
It won't take long to compile, but yeah, if I could get on Wednesday morning.
if that's how.
So,
It is.
We're all coming tomorrow.
Yeah.
We could,
You just bring it back
Hand
tomorrow.
deliver.
we hand deliver them to Sean.
Oh, yeah.
Tomorrow night.
Set them in meetings the rest of the day.
That sounds good.
So Sean,
Yes.
for someone who definitely did not major in accounting and finance, for good reason, could you give me a sense of, if we spend the money that's not in red, have we spent all of the money we believe we're gonna have this year?
So
Or are we spending money we hope we don't spend?
here's the way I think about it. And the answer, I wish it was yes or no, when I don't know how to answer that fully. What we submitted in the proposed budget is in that first line, which is the 965,000 to the back. So we would be drawing down on the general fund if we didn't do anything on the rest of the 2 pages.
So there's 965 that we believe is discretionary.
No, other way around. We've over committed 965,000.
Just to everything else.
So
So every-
most years, we underspend by $1 million, so we're hoping that 965 will slide under the,
Historically,
bar.
that's been kind of generally sort of the logic.
and that does not include the things in red.
It doesn't include anything else on this page.
Anything else.
Okay.
And so when you start to add up the pieces that are remaining, the short answer is even the best case scenario I would think that anybody could put on the table in terms of tax revenue next year would not come close to covering what we have on the pages right now. Please don't read into the red, because that would seem to imply that I'm targeting certain things. Those red items that were in there I only put those in to indicate that nobody's really had a fair shot at appropriately sizing that yet. So I wouldn't base it on the red and the black as good or bad. It's just, that was what we had at the time, and I haven't updated it. But if you add up the pieces, staffing, 650,000, the other items that the teams brought back at the department level, 300,000, call that $1 million in addition, that are things that have been talked about in our meetings, absent the infrastructure. And the reason I break out the piece I call infrastructure is it is so sizable that I kind of think of it as we're going to have a non-standard or separate from the way we operate government, having hopes of paying for those items. So
We kind of discussed that. I mean, that's when we asked for some options, 3 or 4 meetings back, what's in the DTR, what's in our revolving funds to handle some of these, because in my mind, I kind of try to separate them into 2 pieces, capital outlay projects that are outside of the budget that we might have some means to fund outside the budget. But as I understand, right now, none of these items right now, our budget book anticipates a $965,000 drawdown, which in the back of our heads, we anticipate is covered by increased tax revenue. So our balanced budget starts at the top, and so anything we spend off this puts us backwards. There's not a single thing in here that's anticipated in our current budget book. So,
And you don't have the 800,000 that we still have in ARPA funds that's still out there in the safe.
Actually, I put that in here just as a placeholder. It's in the first row under county infrastructure. So page 850, I put 850 in here and said that's uncommitted. recognizing that that could close the gap on any variety of the things in the risk category.
Well, I appreciate you putting it that way, though, because it's always been held for broadband. We undertook a big project, and we have a commitment there.
I was looking for my first 5-page cheat sheet we had early on. Is the family court, are those
So those
positions?
19.5s,
Yeah.
I think we could take those off, Commissioner Lautner, I believe. So there's been some debate whether those were going to be a 23 or 24 item.
Where are you?
I believe that those,
These
To family and probate court
Oh,
grants,
yes,
grant
49,
submissions,
50.
yes.
Or lines
You
49,
think
50?
those could come off?
49 and 50, I believe.
Yes, before we went to print, I amended the 292, and then 3 meetings back, we had the discussion, Commissioner Rexroad asked, if you have all the expenses, why hasn't the revenues come down? And so I think that was gonna be, something that's like our last minute, between Sean, because the 292 is funded by the general fund. And so, the discussion from Commissioner Rexroad was, if you're not showing that state revenue according to that new state contract, there should be some kind of offset there. And I believe the conversation kind of stayed status quo, that Cam didn't want
There is a discussion there where we are probably on different pages than,
Yes.
Cameron.
All right.
But what's reflected here right now in that it's the third line down, so sheriff, jail, child care fund 292. That 213,000 actually does 2 things. And it gets really messy. And if you remember the day that he was in here, we were kind of going back and forth because I had very detailed schedules because every line item is in flux. I went back in after our meeting at Commissioner Wessel's recommendation, and I sized, because there is an agreement from that department, what moving from 50% to 75% share covered, and I showed that as an opportunity in here. I think the challenge is, to be fair to Cameron, somebody else may think from a different seat that the intention of the state was not necessarily to reduce the county share, but to increase the services provided there.
There, I think, is a disconnect right there. Yeah, yeah.
So there's a discussion there, but right now what this reflects is just the raw math of,
Right.
of an increased coverage to which he has not submitted increased opportunities to serve. Did I say that right?
And it was figure outable.
to figure out that.
I just like,
Calculator.
I use that word now, thank you, so.
There is a licensing fee.
That's right. I've kept track of the time, so we'll work that out.
Did that answer that one?
Yeah.
And I wish, again, I'm honestly not trying to duck the question. I don't, I just look for data points that are out there. Am I encouraged by what I've heard from all sides relative to property valuation and what's going on in the county in terms of revenue for 2024? Yes. I don't have that all quantified the way that I wish that I could, but I do think that that's a fair data point. Another data point that's in here is, remember, not all grant money that is possible is reflected in that budget. So it's possible to cover, and in fact, I think I've heard the challenge many times from the board to individual departments or elected officials to pursue those aggressively. And Administrator Allen has repeatedly tried to send that message. I think that we know that we go into this with a discretionary component which we hold, which is in the budget. This gets a little confusing, but we put a $440,000 line item in the budget that is not committed. And so there's a little, let's say, cushion.
Right there.
And again, that's historical, that's what we placed in there, and that has been so nothing different than past operations. There's a $250,000 item in here for incremental MERS funding. We haven't specifically talked about that, but that is again in line with the prior years. So both of those items are at the very bottom of the second page. I put them in there. There's no budget impact because in effect, those items are there. And so in my mind, you can close part of the gap in at least mentally with the opportunities with taxes, the opportunities with grants, the discretionary piece. So you get part of it, and then I think the magic is how much do you close the rest? And to Commissioner Rexroth's thoughts, it's those, in my mind, it's the really bulky infrastructure amounts that are left. And so HVAC's the gorilla kind of in the closet. And beyond that, I think there are some items in the staffing level that I'm sure you're going to take a look at and challenge. And beyond that, I do think it starts to come back to a discussion collectively on how we manage invested funds and how comfortable we are, in effect, drawing down on DTR. And I think the answer is some, but not. So.
I know we have that somewhere out, I've actually found it, but I'm not sure for everyone. It'd be probably helpful next Wednesday to kind of bring that document back, and maybe with it have a couple iterations where HVAC is maybe 1.2-ish or something. I mean.
1.2 to 1.5, I think.
Yeah, depending on what that is, and then maybe the back porch isn't 475, just knock it down, or not, like, just so we can look again at, like, what do we have tools to work with outside, because those are really tools that are outside the normal budgetary process, really. This is drawing down reserves and DTR reserves. I mean, we have to set it, but it's not year-to-year decision-making type things. They're one of, so I don't know, I'd be good to review that again, I think, for my sake, and I think the others as well.
And the HVAC thing, I hear you,
Yeah.
the discount for getting a whole bunch.
Yeah.
But what if we got half?
Oh, I agree 100% with that. And maybe it's a third, maybe
The
it's
idea is storing 5 years' worth of heat pumps just kind of bounces in my brain.
Sounds like a good
But we
idea
don't
the way
need yet.
inflation is.
Yeah, they're not getting cheaper, but we'll figure, I mean,
Every
yeah.
year, 10% more.
Appreciate you saying that, or that's the third item then for, you want me to reach out to Gary, or I don't know how you thought about doing that, yeah, whether you wanted to have a discussion on that.
Yeah, I think he has some information together, so
Okay.
but we'll ask him to be here on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think, okay.
Okay.
Sound like a plan, so whatever you bring back, I'm gonna count votes,
I'll make a copy
There.
and you can have it.
You won't
I
tattle.
won't blame Ruthie for.
And I guess if someone doesn't have a strong feeling on one of these things, they don't have to answer it at all. It's
I
just,
think that's fair, yeah. I can only have it from what we
Yeah.
have.
We did talk, you talked last week, and we talked in finance this morning about the potential need for another person.
So thank you, Mike. And that, so I don't know what to do with this one given the timing. This morning when I was putting this together, I stuck a line item in here that I wasn't sure how this morning was gonna go. We had finance committee meeting. We did not get a chance to get to resources, which was a little bit by design because in my mind, I struggled putting resources out there ahead of, declaring kind of what's the work, what work drive the resources. But that said, I did take a shot at putting at least a placeholder out there. I called it a financial analyst. And the reason I did that, just so we're super clear, is that isn't probably the right word in county government roles. That is my made-up thing so that nobody could attach to it the word clerk, the word assistant finance director, the, union, non-union. I just wanted to start with what we think we need. Because I appreciate all of you who have asked, what do you need? And so I've taken a shot at kind of a skill set and what do you mean by that? Like, why is that different than how we're structured today? And I'd be happy to talk about it. I just didn't know whether there's a sequence thing here and timing thing.
I have a question regarding that. I mean, at our finance committee meeting today, I mean, we were handed handouts and then there'll be minutes. That stuff should be made available to the whole board, including the handouts you gave us as soon as possible, right?
So in between meetings, I gave them to Laurel and asked that they be distributed. I mean, typically she posts those publicly, but I have no problem sending them around to everybody.
Oh, no,
right
well,
now.
just to make,
Yep.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
I see you are reserving the money to hire a person for your department as a high priority.
I appreciate it.
If your department is going to work, we have to staff it.
we're not gonna get it done otherwise. That's just, you said candidly, and I appreciate candidly, you're having trouble keeping up with just the workload part of it, the entering stuff and you laid out, I can't remember, around 20 Q4 things that are gonna get done, and I don't know how that gets done. And so I personally, Scott, I don't know how we move forward though.
I think you got it handled.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
We have one more item on our agenda, the late edition item.
Okay.
For those of you that were thinking, oh, we're out of here early.
No.
The floor is yours, Melinda.
Okay, thank you. Well, it came to my attention, some information that, it was a piece of the basement build-out that we really didn't look at, and that's how much square footage we're going to be giving up. That's going to be out of our control and out of our use for 10 years. So that's 2,688 square feet. So 2,688 square feet. We're going to take that entire space and lose that. If you look at our courtrooms, combined upstairs, they're 1,890. The conference room, the community meeting room down there is 1,688 square feet. So we're going to think of the size of that conference room down there and add 1,000 square feet. And this is for employees that are just going to be here. I've heard for 3 days a week. So something about our clerk is operating under 852 square feet with a staff of, 6 in there? Soil conservation is 1,614. And that's a perfect size, I think. The 1,614 square feet would have been absolutely plenty. That's 1,000 less square feet than what we're going to be giving up. So if you imagine if we were to keep out something the size of the clerk's office, which is 852 square feet, and add 100 feet to that, we could have kept that out of that big room we're giving up. That would take care of our storage needs and our recycle bins, etc. So if it could have been configured in such a way to have just not built out that entire space, that would have helped a lot. If one didn't want to consider taking the current conference room at 1,600 feet and building that out, and then moving down and making a community meeting room out of the far northwest end of that room that has the banks of windows on both sides. Because what we're going to be doing now is, on one hand, we say, well, we're all about our employees. We want to take care of our employees. we're pushing our employees completely out. And I've heard from a lot of employees, and they're not thrilled with this whole idea of what we're doing. So we're scrunching them down. We're scrunching the storage area for the senior services and the conservation district to scrunch some exercise equipment in that room for our employees. So we're really putting them back on the back burner. And then we're talking potentially a shipping container for storage on this campus. And that was one of the questions I kept asking over and over and over again is, what are we going to do? Because we need to put that stuff somewhere. So far, the best we've come up with is a shipping container on this campus, this beautiful campus. And I don't care if it's behind a pole barn, if it's in the woods. It is, to me, just an absolute debacle. So again, before it's too late, I would really like for us to reconsider an option for what we're going to do before they start pounding nails down there, because this is something that never came to this Buildings and Grounds Committee, which it should have done. It never, 2 years ago, it did. And the suggestion was not to do what we're doing. Buildings and Grounds did not suggest that. They said we needed a potential office space down there for accounting at that time. So anyway, that's a lot of square footage that we're giving up for 10 years. We've got nowhere else to go after that.
How many employees for the soil conservation?
6.
There's many part-time, but 4 full-time,
4 full-time
and
and
then several part-time.
Environmental health doesn't have that many, though.
yeah, I'm talking just environmental health, yeah.
Right.
This is an interesting stat. I wish I'd have known that. I mean, I can't say it. I mean, interesting stat. I wish I'd have known that. I mean, you have other offices in here that are operating on 100 square foot or 120 per person, and they obviously need 400 square foot per person. I don't know if I don't know what you do now, but I have to agree that is a, yeah.
It's a relevant point, but we've been spending money for architecture drawings
We're done with it.
we've got a bid from a contractor. We've spent a lot of money already. I think it's really late to bring this up because it just increases the cost I'd like to know how much it will increase the cost to back up, do new architectural drawings, do new bids. I could see holding out 800 square feet perhaps, but it's going to cost us that much more money and it's going to set us back another year.
You know, we've signed the contracts.
Yes.
I mean,
This is done.
they've been written by the attorneys and signed by the parties. I don't even know how we would get out of that. I think they're relevant
You won't.
statistics,
We
but
talked about it this
That's
morning.
actually not true. I mean, you can request a change order addendum from anyone. I'm not condoning that, but I'm just saying it is possible to be done. And architectural fees run about 10% of total cost. So if you took 80,000 out of cost, you would spend about 10,000 architectural fees to do it. There's no planet where architectural fees cost more than construction.
But I thought we already agreed on the contract.
But I'm not condoning, I'm just saying that's the reality. I'm not giving
We
direction.
also
I have a question,
have
too.
architectural drawings for the other room at the end of the hall across from soil conservation. We
No.
had
My God,
that.
that takes us back 2 years.
We had that space drawn up, which was enough room for environmental health at that time. So we had that we had those drawings. And they were okay until they saw the room at the other end of the hall and said, oh, this is great. Look at how much elbow room there is. So then we lose everything
No.
entirely.
I debate that.
Deb's got something to say.
So I just have a point of question, clarification from the board. So the question in regards to the family court and the items that they have stored downstairs. The only reason we were looking at a potential shipping container, which used would be 3,500, new would be about 6,500. The point of clarification is, I don't know what the expectation is or what the obligation is for the county to provide space for those items, or if that is a responsibility of the court. This is truly clarification or direction from the board as to if we are liable to provide them that space, or if it could be their responsibility to have that space. That's the only reason why we looked into that other option. So I don't know, I'm just looking for perhaps some direction from the board as to what the understanding of the expectation is for family court for those items. If it should be our responsibility to store them or theirs. John just reached out to me today, and I truly would like some guidance from this board.
I sure would think something like a shipping container is a whole lot more appropriate than a palatial room with glass on two sides. We have the most expensive storage room in the country, I would imagine.
That's why we could turn that.
So,
Yeah, I don't know where we go from here. I guess I take suggestions from we just went through a little bit of a deal like this with Leelanau Township and the tower project, and I wasn't very patient with the township coming back and saying they wanted to renegotiate the deal, because I said to them, once you have a deal, you got a deal. And I understand that's a lot of square footage down there, but we initiated it. I'm not saying Melinda did, and I'm not, but the board initiated it. The environmental health didn't come in and say, we've been thinking about the space down there. It was proposed by some members of this board.
and I also debate that they're only going to be there 3 times a week. Those guys work here. They're going to have stable offices. They do our work here. It's appropriate that they have offices here.
And isn't it a possibility that at some point we would switch around offices? I mean, it's not designated only forever to be the health department. If we decide
To move them around.
accounting or clerks need, I don't know, I'm just saying this space is being utilized to the fullest right now in the plan that we've approved, right, in the contract we put out. That space is being utilized well, I believe, from what I can tell.
But it's too much. It's my point, because my point is it's too much because we have no room to expand. If we had one division of county government, which we are mandated, this is what we do. We are county government. We're not the health department. We are the courts. We are the courts.
We have an obligation.
So we have an obligation, which we did give them, So we have no place to expand. We have absolutely no place to add one division should we have to. We don't even have room to put this person, if we consider this person for finance, except into equalization. So we are already out of space up here. We have no room to expand it. We're giving up 2,688 square feet for 10 years. It should be 1,000. It should be 1,000 square feet less, or we should pull out those plans. And everyone, who here has seen the drawings for the room at the end of the hall, other than Ty and myself?
We have.
That was never. That's my point. It was never considered. This was shoot from the hip, and now we're looking at.
Why wasn't it
shipping.
discussed months ago then?
It was, and we decided that the room across from soil conservation, they needed that. And my God, it costs money to move everything out of a huge storage building. You're not talking, I really don't get why you keep talking about that building as an
So
idea, that
it-
space.
Excuse me, can I
Well,
interrupt between you two? I mean, Jerry Coleman called me and said, you know, what the heck's going on? That room's too big. We agreed on a smaller room before my term. So that room disappeared. Why?
What room?
I mean, what Jerry Coleman said, who's been here since first brick was laid, he said that the original plan was to put environmental health in a different.
Process.
When did that change? I mean, that wasn't on my watch, okay?
No, that wasn't even discussed in recent history.
In recent history, but it was discussed before. Jerry came to me and says, you know, Rookie, why are we giving all these people space? And I said, damn, we just signed the contract.
Because if that could be done less expensively down there, that would help the health department. That would help us. Because we're obligating $200,000 of our money that for something we won't be able to use for 10 years. So could it be done less down there if we have those drawings?
I'd like to encourage everybody to say what they're thinking right now, and then let's see where we are, because I'm confused about what we need to do. Gwen?
My only question is, does the finance department need offices? Let me finish after it looks like you were about ready to respond.
I mean, in an ideal world, like any department head, I think would answer, you would love to be co-located. There's efficiency, effectiveness with that, there's cohesion. I guess I don't believe that, I think it's going to be challenging where we are now, but the way I answered it earlier in the buildings and grounds meeting is of all the things that I feel like I'm fighting right now or trying to get ready for, that's one that I guess I recognize the limited space here. And honestly, like, this is just me. This is my personal side of that. I wouldn't be comfortable making a public display of spending money right now for that while we've got the challenges we just went through. But that's as honest as I can. I think it is what it is.
Go ahead and finish.
So my feeling is we've been talking about this for a very, very, very long time, and we finally have everything going. I am very tired of hearing about the storage room across from soil conservation being an ideal space. It's a great storage space. It's used, soil conservation, I believe, likes having it right across the hall. I don't comprehend that. I mean, it costs a lot of money to convert a huge storage room. Meanwhile, we've got another room that would be easy. I don't like backpedaling. We have a commitment. We have environmental health that needs the space. I don't see that. It keeps being called not our space. It serves our citizens. It's our space. We are providing services. If we asked, I'd be slightly open to asking environmental health. I don't remember what their first statement was as far as space. It seems like they had one. If that's too big for them, the other thing is, if the state gets a septic ordinance, they need to put on more people. That's a possibility.
I asked them at the meeting last week when we did the walkthrough with the architects about the space. And it was larger than they needed. They were bringing on one more person, so they needed five offices. But that one part, the conference room, was larger than they needed. but they did need all the planned offices.
So they're utilizing all the space.
Well, they said they were going to.
Okay, so I don't like starting over.
Doug?
I feel a little bit conflicted because I try to center my judgment on whether it was the right place to put it and how the deal went. I assumed that the environmental side was being as efficient as they could with their space requirements. I assumed they were giving me the minimum they required to get their job done. I feel right now, without further information, a little bamboozled on that point. I did support the project based on, hey, this is probably what made sense. I don't know exactly what the path forward is, but I feel uncomfortable with this new information. But, whether we can start over right now, I don't know, but I guess I'd like at least someone to justify the space needs based on the information that we've just received, so that I can just feel good about my decision. I don't know that we can back up. I don't know how to go backwards from here. I mean, there is options, but and nothing against Melinda's math, I don't know, but I'd like to hear from them to justify, based on other spaces that are being used here, why they need that much space. I guess and I don't know if that changes the project, but it puts me in a really awkward spot to sit here and find, well, I mean, if that is true, and I have constituents who walk through there and see empty space unused that we just spent money on, they're gonna ask me questions. And so I don't know that we can go backwards or change, I don't know how to fix it, but if it is indeed accurate, I wish I'd have had this information months and months ago, because there was a redraw that we did once already when we were out of budget. It would have been a great time to say, but, maybe I didn't ask. Of course, this is part of everyone transitioning and coming in the middle of a long series of decision-making, and you assume people prior to you did some due diligence that apparently now I have to assume maybe wasn't done. I don't know. So it's an awkward spot for me. I gotta be 100% honest. I mean, it's we all answer the taxpayers, and are we doing something more than what they need? I don't know. I don't know if anyone here knows that right now. So that gives you no direction, just other than you asked me to tell you how I feel, and that's how I feel.
Cameron?
I think this discussion should have happened months ago, and I'm really disappointed that we're discussing this today. It doesn't make any sense to me. We were given the information about the changes in the plans, I assumed that was based on facts. And if it wasn't based on facts, what was it based on? Just a dollar amount? I mean, obviously the needs of the health department and our available space should have been thought out well before 3:15 on this afternoon. I think this is ridiculous that we're having this conversation. And I guess I would mimic what you just said. It's a very awkward position to be in. And I don't know why we're here. I don't feel very professional right now.
Well, top that.
Well, I listened to both of them, and there comes a point in group dynamics, one of my old TSA classes, where you get right down to the last, you start over, you just go ahead with it. Okay. I'm on the same page. I didn't look at the square footage. I didn't, and then Jerry Coleman, the guy that's in charge of everything here, says, why do they need that much space? Dang, and I'm sure he called Melinda and told her, why do you need this much space? But it was, why didn't we have the information before? I'll go along with a non-professional that I didn't do my job right now.
That's the way I feel. Yeah. But I don't even know that's true.
Is that
We
our
didn't-
job? Actually, we
My
did
job,
not our
I
job.
didn't
We did not
look at the square footage, that to me was wrong. It's
I
like,
did, but what did, I didn't
Compared-
compare the square footage of all these other
but you
buildings.
didn't compare to anybody else.
Is it our job?
Yeah, I guess it is, we're in charge from the shingles to the grass.
We're not here every day. We're not.
I agree with you.
We can't do all.
This isn't,
And
you
it
can,
is a different department. It is the health department, so they need a little bit more space Like having their own conference room is important. They have people coming in. So they assessed their needs and we looked at this carefully.
We did not look at this carefully. And Soil Conservation District has 1,614 square feet. That is the ideal, perfect office situation down there, and they have a conference room. So
They
the
have
point
three
is today,
offices.
we haven't pounded a nail yet. It wouldn't be too late for this commission to take a breather and look at this project and I don't care if we, as a group, take a walk through the basement, walk through soil conservation, walk through the ugly room, walk through this big space down there, and look at what's best for the county, because once you pound that first nail, all that in gigantic space is gone, 2,600 square feet. Well, we've got 6 employees in less than 1,000. And so we had the opportunity to fix what we should have fixed. The problem is that the only thing that just kept coming before us was what the health department wanted. It wasn't what we proposed. It was what the health department was proposing. We have those drawings. I think that everybody ought to look at them for across from Soil Conservation District. That's nothing to move that stuff down to a storage area along with the other things, still take care of our employees, and still keep buildable room out. Right now, we've got IT we've pushed into planning already. IT's in an office in the planning department. We're talking about putting some of accounting into equalization. We're already out of space, and we have an opportunity to do something about it
Rehash.
now.
Well, we haven't heard from Jamie, and you didn't hear from me. So Jamie's not here, but I kind of echo where Cameron was, because I'm willing to call up Dan and call up the board chair of health and say, are you sure you need all that space? But I don't like doing business that way, and I don't like, Jerry Coleman showed me the square footage as I was walking into the clerk's office to sign the contracts. That's a little bit late to do that, but I did speak to them. There are 5 offices, and that's more offices than Soil Conservation has. And they do have the need for a conference room down there. So I understand that we could be smaller. I understand maybe we should have listened to Belinda earlier, but this board voted, the last board lobbied, the last board chair pushed. Janik spent 2 years working on it. The health board spent 2 years working on it. They already thought we were delaying too much. If we call them, it's going to be with a red face.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's
Possible legal.
yeah, and I don't even know the legal, and I suspect that we asked Deb to reach out to the contractor. And asked Deb to reach out to Dan at the health department and add this, we'll take the day to think about it, add this as a late edition tomorrow night.
Okay.
But tomorrow night, there's no sense saying what we've said today.
Is that contractor going to look at the plans we had for the room across from soil conservation?
That is
No,
not an office
no,
space. Come
no.
on, it's not an
That's
office
okay.
space.
There
Why
was
take,
nothing wrong with that space down there. There's a lovely window
But
down
we
there.
have passed that bridge.
Months
We ruled that
Months
out before,
Months
and it
ago.
was on a
Then
6-1 vote.
what will you have the contractor look at, taking something out, saving some of that space?
Would they like to reduce
Corner?
the one corner piece of it?
Okay.
I don't see rebuilding the whole thing.
So you're building out a space for the future, not, the 10 years is gonna be health department, but maybe something else after that. It's gorgeous space that's gonna be utilized for
We
the
would have
public good.
And we will
It
always
always
have
is
a
for the
health
public good.
Potentially 1,000 square feet that we would have at least for future, should we need it for county offices.
I'd like us to take a breather on this, because I don't think we're going to make a decision today, let's think about it tomorrow. We'll put it on as a late edition if people will support that.
I even hesitate there. We have talked and talked and talked and talked about this. Good job for resurrecting it again.
I think
I-
the other part of it is
I-
listening.
I-
So let's just, we need to do our due diligence and do what is best.
Knock, knock.
Absolutely.
Knock, knock.
You're welcome.
Carry that on later.
And her perseverance.
Deb or Sean, you wanna say anything in response to the, downstairs? You wanna bite your tongue?
Select your sixth grade report card, how you got along with others, okay?
At this time, we'll take public comment. Commissioner comment? Don't you dare.
Show my grandson.
Looking for a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Object.
Thank you.